Today's all about engaging with the buyer. It's about three different things. First of all, traditional sales messaging, why that encourages the buyer to move so much towards price. Next, it'll be about the TPD Principle. So that's a three-stage way of creating an effective sales message. And finally, it's all about using those elements to create a really effective introductory pitch, whether you're phoning someone up, meeting them, or it's your website, something that makes the buyer want to move ahead in your sales cycle and have that next meeting with you. You're starting off with me. I used to be a print buyer. I'm the person who makes your lives so difficult. I'm the person who demands the impossible. I want it by yesterday. You put your hearts and souls into creating a fantastic job for me on time. You deliver it, and I reserve the right to change my mind. What I hear from everybody who I talk to in the industry is that it's people like me who are making it all about price, price, price. I am personally responsible for the fact that for some of you, you may be finding that this is what's happening to your profit margins in your jobs. This morning, what I want to do is to have a look at things in a slightly different way. I want to put my side of the table because yes, I choose on price a lot of the time. But why do I do that? And what can you do about that to try and stop me from choosing on price? So I'm going to share with you some of my experiences. I'm going to share with you some of the strategies that other companies are using that do engage me as a print buyer. And I'm going to give you some examples of times when I actually did not buy print on price. And I chose willingly to choose a solution that was not the lowest cost. It's my travel pillow. Okay, this may seem like a strange print buying tool. I used to work at a company called Future Publishing, the UK's 5th largest newsstand publisher. I had about 120 magazines, a print budget in excess of £12 million. So as you can imagine, I was a pretty popular person on people's prospect lists. A lot of printers in the UK wanted a piece of my print budget. So you can imagine a busy day in the office. There I am, firefighting, dealing with budgets, trying to plan ahead, and the phone goes, oh good, it's another printer. And before I can get a word in edgeways, I'm hearing all about your company, every detail of it. And I can just put my head back on my travel pillow and relax for a couple of minutes while you tell me all about the first generation of the company that started off in 1880. You tell me all about the fantastic new JDF delivery workflow on your press. Okay, and it's just nice and relaxing. I've got the gentle drone of the salesperson's voice here. And then eventually you stop, because you have to stop at some point because you have to take a breath. And at that point, I can go thanks but no thanks, or I'll send you a quote sometime and put the phone down. So next time you ring up a prospect, I want you to imagine that they're wearing their travel pillow, because all buyers have a virtual travel pillow there. Wouldn't it be nice if that was a customer who rang you up and said, you know what, I've heard about your company, I'd like to work with you. Well, if print companies follow the strategies that we're going to talk about this morning, you're going to start having a different relationship with your customer. You're going to have a customer who wants to work with you, who understands how you can help them as a person and their business, rather than just being someone who puts ink on paper. Then you're in a much better situation to be in control of a powerful sales pipeline. And of course, if you've got that sales pipeline, you've got a much better chance of achieving the goals that you need to achieve, whether that's your personal sales targets, whether that's your company goals, or probably most important of all, your own personal goals. The maximum we've had was a generous 50% hit rate from those print sales pitches. And actually what we were getting most of the time was 20 or 30% hit rate of success of people who would give you a meeting, let alone place any business with you. So I mentioned that I worked for Future Publishing. During that time, I reckon that I had about 1,400 approaches from different printing companies. And I wish I could say that I'd seen a huge variety of sales pitches. But you know what? 98% of them were pretty much exactly the same. Okay, so I'm just going to take you through my list now. So the first thing that I have on the sales message test is people love to tell me about their company history or all about their company. Exciting to get me well up for going for your company? Maybe not. Next, service. Everyone in the print industry tells me they provide great service. And of course you should. As a buyer, I expect great service. But buyers take service as a given. The environment. If I believed all the sales pitches that I'd had, the woods near where I live at weekends would be filled with printers running around hugging trees because they love the environment so much. You all tell me you can put ink on substrate. And I should hope so, you're printers. You should be doing good quality. If you're not doing good quality print, you shouldn't be in business. Next on the list, the plant list. We don't need to hear every single bit of kit you've got straight off in your elevator pitch. And finally, price. Lots of people tell me that they do competitive price. Now hang on a second, because I thought that it was supposed to be me, the buyer, making it all about price. Is that me making it all about price if you tell me you've got great prices? Anyone got any thoughts on how I might choose a print company if everyone's telling me all these things which are pretty much the same? It's a bit like saying 3 things that are the same in the shop. Now if you see something that you want and there's 3 in a shop, they all look pretty much the same, which one would you choose?
The cheapest.
Yeah, the cheapest. So that's what I'm going to do at this point as a buyer. If everything sounds pretty much the same in that first 30 seconds, I'm going to choose about on price. Here's 3 ways that I see people selling on price in the print industry. Okay, first of all, people are asking me for quotes. Now, if that request for the quote comes so early on in the conversation, then have I engaged with you yet? Do I really want to use your company yet? The only thing I can possibly judge you on at that point is price. Wait before asking for the quote, sounding desperate. So one of the other things I get a lot of is people ringing me up from people I work with going, "Hi Matthew, hope you're well, how's things at the moment? We're a bit quiet this week. I was just wondering if you've got any jobs you could help me out with." Excellent news, okay. I'm a buyer, yes, I'll help you out with a job at that point, but boy, do I want a low price if you're desperate at that point. Finally, mindset. Virtually everyone I talk to in the print industry at the moment tells me how everyone is buying on price. So you're all going out and selling on price. Now, many of the time I've actually told printers before now, I will spend more money with you if you can help me out in certain ways. And the majority of times they come back to me and they say, "How cheap do you want your print, Matthew?" I want to introduce you to the TPD Principle. It's a 3-step way of creating a sales message. There should be 3 elements in there. The first of these is target audience. The second of these is pain. Okay, you want your customers sobbing before you sell to them. And lastly, difference. You have to make yourself stand out as well. Let's think about how it might be in the print industry, because we've all got those times when we're picking up the phone and we're calling people, no one there, no answer, in a meeting, no answer, sod off, in a meeting, hello, yes, I'd love to speak to you. What do I do now? Raise your hands if you have ever then gone into your sales script at that point and gone through something that's maybe a little bit the same old thing that you say to everyone at that point when you've talked to someone, yeah? Well, I've got 1 person being honest at the end of the room, 2 people. And the trouble is, when you do that, you've got no chance of engaging to the buyer. There's many printing companies out there and they're trying to be all things to all people. You want as many customers as you can. You don't care where they come from as long as they're going to pay you and hopefully make a decent profit margin on the work. You go into that point where you do sound similar because you have to have a generalistic message. So I'm going to suggest that actually you should have a target audience instead. So how do you pick a target audience? You have to make sure that you really narrow down really deeply to pick your buyer, because then you're in a position to talk to them properly and be in their world. So I'm actually going to suggest that you take just 1 person, that you take your best customer and that you get to know this person. I'm going to suggest that you actually interview them as well. And when I've told clients that I'm doing this, and it's for a bit of research, no one has ever refused me the time to do that. Let me tell you about my target market. My target market is someone called Neil. Now Neil is the managing director of a medium-sized commercial print company, and Neil is very focused on making his company run. He's very production focused. He loves print. 2 years ago, Neil lost his largest customer. 20% of his turnover gone, just like that. So Neil unfortunately had to make some people redundant. He had to mothball some equipment, but he still had a big gap on his presses that needed filling. I need a sales team there, 3.5 people. They're kind of old school. They were very, very good at servicing their current customers. Okay? Their customers absolutely loved them. When I was talking to some of their customers, I couldn't get over how big fans they were of this company. But the sales team, when it came out to going out and targeting new business and getting new business in, that was a bit more of a scary prospect for them. Neil realised at that point that he needed some help. That he needed to change in the company. Sort of company that I love to deal with. I love to help them with their sales and their marketing. But because I'm in their world and I understand where they're coming from, I can now talk to a whole load more companies like that because I have that knowledge of Neil. And I'm suggesting that you need some knowledge of your customers like that as well. But secondly, social media. Very easy on something like LinkedIn to connect with a target audience and then say to that person, look, I don't want to sell to you, but could you spare me a little bit of time on the phone so I can learn more about your business because we're thinking of moving into that area. And again, through LinkedIn, a lot of people are very happy to help you out in that way if you approach them in the right way, and as long as you assure them that it won't be a sales call. Now, some of you may be feeling, that's all very well, but we've got presses to fill. So if I focus on one person, how am I going to fill my presses? Have more than one target audience. Make sure that you've got a number of messages, different messages for different types of customer, but you focus on different sectors. When you do know your customers, you'll begin to understand what motivates them to buy as well, because you'll be beginning to understand their pains and what they need. I'm told now that the average print buyer is female, between 25 and 35, and in a marketing team. Yeah, there's quite a lot of those, I think, around. Yes, raise your hands if you've got clients a bit like that. And suddenly we're seeing a lot more hands in the room going up all of a sudden. Now, those people, do they know about print? Raise your hands if most of your customers know about print now. 2 people in the room, 3 people in the room maybe. Raise your hands if most of your customers actually care about the printing process. 0 people in the room. What do you think the favourite subject of most of your customers is? They love talking about themselves. If you can make the conversation about them, you're in a great position. And the thing that actually they're probably going to talk about most is pain. Their own challenges. That's what really gets them talking, is what makes their lives difficult at work. So here's my business card. Am I purchasing a piece of print, 4x1 on 350 gram board, 80 by 55 millimeters? Anyone think that's what I'm purchasing? What I'm buying most of all is the ability to get my contact details into your address books. Because as I meet people, I want them to remember me, remember what I do. The time to buy is probably not right now. But later on, they're going to think, actually, we've got a print marketing problem. We've got a print salesperson problem. Let's talk to Matthew. I just want you to imagine that I'm coming round and I'm going to give each of you £100 that you never had before. How do you feel about this? Quite happy? Suspicious? Okay, well, no one's jumping for joy at this point. We've got some vague happiness and a lot of suspicion going round. Okay, I want you to imagine another scenario now. That you have £100 in your pocket, and on your journey home, as you're getting out of the car, or as you're leaving the train, that £100 falls out of your pocket. How do you feel now? Gutted, frustrated, angry, sick as a dog. See, there's so much more emotion coming out now compared to when I gave you that £100 that you never had before. Let's pretend that I'm ringing you up from your garage. Good afternoon. I just wanted to tell you about this fantastic new chip we've got in now. We can fit the chip to your model of car for £175, and it does great things to acceleration. Your acceleration will be immediately improved if you fit this chip. Raise your hands if you're interested in finding out more and taking this a little bit further about potentially fitting the chip. To everyone else, yeah, we had the fast car people who were interested, and the rest of you couldn't care less. Let's imagine that I'm ringing you up from the garage and I'm going, hello, we've had a lot of cars, same age, same make as yours coming in recently, and we've noticed that a lot of them have had brake problems Okay, we were cracking around the disc drums. Now this isn't a product recall, but actually we'd recommend you to come in, get the car checked, and if there is a problem, we can solve the brake issue for £175. Raise your hand now if you're interested in looking into that a bit further. Not necessarily making the purchase, but doing it a bit further. Okay, so there's a few people in the room who like to live on the edge, okay? Who are willing to put their lives at risk for £175. But most of us are going to do something with that straight away. I've got 75% of you at least in the room thinking seriously about spending £175 because I'm suddenly telling you about a problem, about a pain that you have. So if I come in and tell you I've got a fantastic press, and if you go with me, my press will deliver better quality print, better service, is that going to excite you as a buyer? Raise your hands if suddenly you're thinking, wow, I must change my printer because they've got a slightly faster press, or they've got ISO 12647, or they've got a JDF workflow. Anyone? No. Okay, how about I come in and I tell you I've got some fantastic personalized marketing and I can do individual marketing, I can do multi-channel, cross-channel, I can do SMS for you, I can do emails, I can do pearls, I can do girls. Raise your hand if you're thinking, yeah, I'm up for this now. If we can find the pains of our customers and our prospects, then we're in a much better situation. You need to be the pain relief, okay? You need to be their Nurofen. So the first type that we have is return on investment. And yet I sat down with this company for 2.5 hours one afternoon and had a meeting with them about how I could spend all this extra money on print. The person from this print management company had phoned me up and said, we've got a Spanish printing company and we reckon that they can do better prices than the UK ones. Can I come and talk to you about it? And actually I said yes, because at that time the board was saying, why are we only looking at companies in the UK? So unplanned, this person had actually hit on a pain point for me where I could go, yes, I've investigated the Spanish market. So they came in, we did the figures. The Spanish printers, by the time you took the transport into account, were more expensive, and that's before you'd even taken into account the siesta factor. I got another call from him a few days later, and he went, Matthew, when I was in your offices, I noticed the amount of people you had there, because I'd done a little tour of the offices with him. I noticed how many people you had in there doing production. And it seems to me that actually you've probably got a few too many people in there doing the production for the amount of work that you have, to my mind. Can I come in and have a chat with you about that? So we had a bit more of a discussion on the phone, and I went, yeah, come in and have the meeting. Because what he had at his company were the right workflows, the right IT investment to manage production more effectively and more efficiently than I could do with my team. We could manage our work more efficiently through their IT workflows. They reckon they could reduce the costs in us doing the production side of things. More importantly, we lost a chunk of overhead that we had to account for every year. And every time you launch a magazine, I reckon you probably had about one production person for 10 magazines. So if you've got another 5 magazines, you need half a person, but then of course you have to recruit the whole person. I didn't have any flexibility problems anymore. That was all their problem instead if we went ahead with this. So that to me was a far, far greater potential saving on my cost base than worrying about a few extra % on my print. Third type of pain is personal pain. We ran a workshop recently and there was a Flexo packaging printer who came in, and one of their clients, the big plus point for this buyer was the fact that she wasn't being rung up by the wrapping machine operators giving her grief about how the packaging that she'd supplied was actually causing them problems and causing them to miss their figures. So what she was buying was a way to get less phone calls like this. We also did some work with a company that supplies to a very major company in the entertainment industry. And when we profiled their buyers, the majority of them were youngish, not always young, but definitely single, very career orientated. They weren't interested in what was good for their company. They were interested in what was good for their careers. So what this company, what the printing company started doing was to focus far less on the results for the company and far more on how these new things that they were producing would make them look good in meetings and how they'd be able to show them off and show they were ahead of their competition. And they got far more results like that because they were focusing on the personal pains that these buyers had. And it's important to think that actually most of the solutions that we talked about, most of them weren't actually that much about print. It's good to try and think about what it is about your service that might bring the solution as much as the print. We need to remember how emotional pain is. Remember that language we were using. Let's remember that the solution to that pain is what's going to drive that purchase. If you can find the client's pain and solve it for them, that's a great position that you're going to be in. And it doesn't have to be about print. Difference is so important, because you need to persuade me as a buyer not only to buy your solution, but to choose you as the company to buy that solution from. When we're talking about difference, I'd like you to remember 3 words: specific, valuable, and proprietary. For if someone was selling web to print, there's a lot of people out there with web to print. So as a buyer, I put little value on one company's web to print solution over another, because there's lots of web to print out there. You should all be able to do it. You need to have something specific for me to get my head around it. So with web to print, we're beginning to drill down a little bit, and we can take it further, because the ABC Print Company, they implement web to print projects better than anyone else. What that means is that they put in a new web to print project that's 100% error free from day one. Now that suddenly becomes quite specific. I understand that as a buyer. That's much clearer than we do good web to print, or we do good quality web to print service. We do web to print error free from day one. So is that valuable to me as a buyer? I think so. And it's interesting because before the ABC Print Company came along, I might have seen a couple of other companies who were selling me web to print, and they were saying to me, yeah, we do web to print, we do great web to print, you should do web to print, it's great, no problems, we can do it for you. I go, okay, that sounds good. Suddenly, I'm realizing that these other companies haven't told me that web to print is quite a complicated thing to put in. They haven't told me some of the problems that I might come up against. Do I trust these companies quite as much? So what the ABC Print Company do is they have the ABC Print Company web to print checklist. If I place a job with the ABC Print Company, I get access to this checklist. And that gives me some security of mind. And I want to use the ABC Print Company. I mean, wouldn't you, if you were doing a print project at this point, wouldn't that be a more engaging sales pitch to you than just we do great web to print? What I want you to think about, if you have no difference, it will come down to price wars at that point, because we'll be getting into commodity pricing again. So for the final bit of this morning, I want to focus on message structure. So the message structure comes in 4 stages. First of all, address your target audience. Tell them that you're in their world. Highlight their pain. Tell them how you solve that pain. And finally, why they should use you. So I'm just going to use my own sales pitch as an example for this. Good morning, everybody. My name's Matthew Parker from Profitable Print Relationships, and I work with printing companies like yours. And what I'm finding is typically these types of printing companies are frustrated by the fact that it's all about price these days. They're struggling to stand out from other printers, and they're fed up with a lack of customer loyalty. So I help printing companies like this solve these problems through a series of training and mentoring processes. Why choose me? That's because I used to be a print buyer. In fact, I've had over 1,400 print sales approaches. So therefore, I understand exactly what works and what doesn't work for buyers. And to the best of my knowledge, I'm the only ex-buyer doing this in the printing industry. Now, I structured that quite carefully. So I introduced myself and I immediately said that I was working with companies like you. Next, I went through the pains, and I used some very emotional language there, because I suggested that many companies in your situation, while not making it personal, I didn't say I'm sure you are, because you might not be. But I did say that many companies like you are frustrated, are fed up, are struggling. And finally, the difference. Even if someone else sets up as an ex-print buyer, they can't say they've had 1,400 print sales pitches. Because if you're in with the procurement people and you use simple language, you're probably not going to float their boat. You're going to need to use procurement language. If you're in with a lawyer or an agency, very different styles of communicating. You need to make sure that your elevator pitch follows that customer language as well.
We work with law firms typically within the legal top 500. We understand that the market is saturated, the law market is saturated, which means that law firms are now having to tender for work, which is a first for the industry. Well, we will find efficiencies within your workflow that will save you time, which mean you can focus on the marketing activity that you're employed to do. We will help you increase your return on investment and give you the management tools to prove it, and we'll find savings within your budget of up to 20% guaranteed.
I'm interested by the guaranteed 20%. Yeah. That's a brave move. I think the rest of it hung together really well and almost didn't need that 20% because it was powerful. Very targeted at the market. I got the pain points straight away. You've got some workflows that are going to make me more efficient and take out my time. I'd have that conversation. I'd certainly give you more time on the phone at that point.
And we are the award-winning Supplier of the Year within the DSA, and we understand the frustrations there can be at managing the brand consistency. We have a proven track record of working together in print, web and marketing to maintain that consistency and improve the reach to your consultants.
I like that. You are very targeted. I understand that you're at me. If I'm in the DSA, you know my world already, which is great. There was quite a lot about you in there, and you want to make this all about the customer.
We assist companies like yours in standing out from the crowd. We offer a range of services to help manage your product from design, ordering and through to stock management. We understand that sourcing images and design components can be a time-consuming headache, and our unique partnership with a horticultural picture supplier means we can source and supply all of the components you need to design your packaging to give a truly class-leading product. I
might have just turned the pain up a little bit. I wasn't quite sobbing before you started telling me why I should use you. But I love the difference as well, because that's a really good difference, because no one else has got it either, and it's a really useful thing for the floral industry, horticultural industry. I just want to remind you, let's get away from selling on price as an industry, okay? Because your profit margins are valuable. Remember the TPD principle: target audience, pain, difference, and you need all three elements in that message to make it work. Use the language of the buyer. So go out and talk to your customers now as a result, because I think that you're going to find that very useful. 3 quick case studies of people who are using this methodology. Pensword, based in Wales, they know their target market. They've got it on the side of their factory. They're focusing on the smaller independent publishers. The pain of these publishers is the fact that they're more traditional, they get putting ink on paper, and now they're in this scary new world because they've got to have the iPad edition, they've got turning page technology, the website. Pensword's solution is also their difference, enough so for them to actually again put it up on their website, because Pensword have a content management system. As a publisher, you upload your content once and they will output it as a magazine, as an app, as an iPad, turning page, all the digital stuff that you want. Let's talk about another company, Leech Print, general commercial printer. Their target market is the education sector, specifically schools and colleges. How about that? If you're a buyer and you're looking for a new supplier, that's a pretty powerful website to have at that point. Chances are you're going to come up quite high in the Google search if you want to find someone to print your prospectus for you. The pains that these people have, people are really worried that their prospectus is going to look old-fashioned or wrong, and Leech Print can really help them with that because they've got tons of samples, they've got their own design studio, so they can come up with the right design solution for the customers. What makes them different? They have a checklist in place. A lot of the people who place prospectuses at these types of organisations, they're in a general marketing and admin role. They don't particularly want to do the prospectus, it's just another job they have to do. So actually Leech Print give them this checklist which takes them right from the beginning of the project, before Leech Print get involved, right up to the final delivery. And finally, a company called Redlin Print, who are now part of the Circle Services group. They went really niche market. They went for big shipping owners. So what's the pain that these people have? You put one of those big boats in port and tie it up for an hour, it costs you tens of thousands of pounds. So what happens if the boat's held in port because it hasn't got the right health and safety paperwork and signage to go out? That's an expensive problem. So what Redlin did was they have a warehouse, the shipping company update them with the changes that are needed, and they maintain up-to-date packs of all the right signage and paperwork to go out to the ship. So when the ship comes into dock, there's a Redlin van waiting there with a pack of paperwork to go on board straight away, so the ship's not going to be held up. If you don't go away and take some of this and put it into action, then you've wasted your time here this morning. But if you're taking this message out in the right ways, you can actually begin to the point where I don't cold call anymore because I'm getting that message out there. Well, maybe this morning you've got some strategies and some methodologies to actually start taming the print buyer, being someone slightly more easy to deal with.
What I want to try and do in the presentation is draw on a lot of the so-called theory that the CIM builds into its marketing qualifications and present it in a simple framework that any business can make use of and develop and get down to the core of what marketing is about rather than what people think it's about. So my job for the next 2 hours is to keep you awake. And I'm going to do that by talking about marketing. What justifies me being here today? A total of 17 years with an organisation called Proprietary, which maybe some of you may have heard of. Proprietary was never a printing operation. It was always a marketing operation. Happened that it was print, that it was marketing. I ended up for a period of time as UK Marketing Director there. And I operate my own sole trader business called Pointer Marketing, which does a lot of mentoring and coaching work for individual marketers. Marketing is the whole business seen from the customer's point of view, which is quite a scary prospect. It's your business seen from the customer's point of view. Responsible for identifying customer requirements, understanding what they are. What they want is always changing. And the really successful businesses in this world are the ones who are ahead of the game. And the other word, the profitable, because the business isn't sustainable unless it's making profit. And because some of that profit is going to be needed to do the research and the identification of what they want, and some of it's going to be doing the blue sky thinking and the anticipating of what they're going to want next. Here's my 3-word definition: satisfying customers profitably. That's what marketing's all about. What's spent on marketing should be seen as investment, not as cost. We're having, therefore, to understand finance a lot more and be able to persuade finance directors and so on that, yes, here's the results we're going to get from this investment, and here's what your return on the investment's going to be. First thing I want to talk about is these people called customers. What can we use to try and understand them a bit better? Second thing, having understood our customers, can we put together the offer that we make to them? And here I'm not just talking about what you're going to offer them in the way of print, but the whole package. And then the third thing I want to talk about, we've got to tell them about it. We've got to communicate with them. 4 steps, which I've called what's happening, where are we trying to get to, how will we get there, and having decided that, at the end of the day, we'd probably better check that we got where we want you to be. That acronym is also known as APIC. Analysis, planning, implementation and control. Anybody heard of the Pestel factors? A few? Yeah? What's happening politically, economically, socially and culturally, technologically, environmentally, legally. All of those areas that might impact on your business and, more importantly, on your customers. So having found out what's happening, we want to go on and set where we're trying to get to. And again, the old SMART objectives acronym. SMART standing for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timed, all of those things. The most important being measurable, because that's what you're going to come back to at the how you know we've arrived bit. The important things are the customers, what we can put together for them that they want, and how we communicate it to them. Marketing is very good at pinching ideas from other disciplines. And in trying to understand customers, One of the disciplines we can pinch ideas from is the discipline of psychology. And what the psychologists say is making a decision is a 5-stage process. First is the recognition that you've got a problem. Having recognised that you've got a problem, I need to look for information as to what solves this problem. Chances are you'll find there's more than one alternative, and your brain will then have to do an evaluation of those alternatives and decide on which one is best and make the decision, in this case a purchase decision. You certainly do a lot of post-purchase evaluation. As soon as you've bought something, you start deciding whether that was a good decision or not. But there's basically 4 areas that influence us as buyers and influence our customers as buyers. And there's all the individual influences, all our individual psychological makeup. There's also a lot of group influences, and particularly in business-to-business marketing. Very rarely is the buyer a single person in an organisation. Customer will be what the books call a decision-making unit. The outside world influences our purchase decision-making. What's the 4th box that influences this purchase-making decision? It's the marketing mix. It's what we do as marketers. So here, if you like the theoretical definition of segmentation, it's breaking the market into smaller groups of people who exhibit similar needs. And why do we segment? Well, it's a lot easier in talking to people if you know already what their problem is. You can match the needs that problem develops. You can target all your communication. Can I even suggest it'll help you retain your customers if you understand their problems and can solve them on a routine basis, which gives you more room for growth and more room for profit. Start looking at your live customers, start understanding them so that you can work with them to make them loyal. Within this information you've got about live customers, can you tell if a customer is lapsing? Doesn't mean you've lost them, but are they starting to show different patterns of purchasing that might mean their needs are changing? And the first step of this analysis of existing customers, this is really oversimplified. Take your customers and put them along one axis of the grid, and take your existing products or services along the other, and plot who buys what, and you'll get a pattern. And if all of the customers that are buying A, B, and C from you must have some similar problems and similar needs, there's a way of profiling and coming up with a segment. Very often, it also reveals things like, well, why is customer number 2 only buying B and C? Why are they not buying A? Maybe if we just told them that we provided A, they would say, oh, I didn't know you did that, and buy it. Do we have the right offering? It's not just to do with the physical product that they get, it's everything that we do. And this is where we come back to this thing called the marketing mix, or the 7 Ps. Obvious one first, and that's the product stroke service. So at the core of the product is the core benefit. In other words, what it is that solves that customer's problem for them, around which you build the actual product. In your case, the physical job you do, the ink on paper that you produce. Around that, what Kotler called the augmented product, any guarantees that you give, the after-sales service that you give, and then how that product can be developed in future. My definition of place is how easy is it for the customer to buy from you? How easy is it to find you and access your service? What about price? It's what the value is to the customer. And you can't tell what the value is to the customer until you know what the customer problem is. Can you add to your offering? How many of your people, of your customers, buy ink on paper? They're not buying ink on paper, they're buying a solution to a problem that hopefully you've suggested involves ink on paper. Might involve a hell of a lot more as well. But there's a lot of other things and other processes within your businesses that impact on the customer. Your order process, how easy is it for them to order? What sales service do you provide? What after-sales service do you provide? Do you have a process of regular communication with the different segments in your customer database? Your process for handling complaints. So think through those processes that you have internally. And the way to do that is to think about what they call the customer journey. How many people in your organisation have some contact or other with a customer? Obviously, if you've got salespeople out there, they're having contact with customers. You've presumably got people at the end of a phone internally who deal with customers. Your accounts people presumably have contact with customers. Please link your processes with your people. Make sure all your people understand the processes and understand how the customer is going to go through those processes, or how they're going to experience those processes in their journey, so that the people give the right responses. Sixth of the P's, physical evidence. Anything physical that your customer sees reflects your image. If your customers come to your premises, do they get the right impression? Does the way you package your print reflect what the customer's expecting and reflect your brand? Promotion. And the promotional toolkit that marketers talk about is advertising, public relations, sales promotion, direct marketing, personal selling. But this bit is all about communication. Everything else we've talked about, all the other P's, are ways of communicating as well, because they're all ways of getting your message across and explaining what your offering is to customers. But this bit of communication, where it's thought about beforehand and planned, is maybe worth looking at in a wee bit more detail. And this communication model comes from the world of electronics. Communication process starts out with someone who wants to send a message. First thing to do is decide who you're trying to communicate that message to, so that we know what message to send to them in the first place. And also, so that we know what medium to use to send that message. You need to encode your message. How you go about doing that will depend on how your receiver's brain works. So you need to phrase it and present it in a way that they will understand. And the receiver's got to decode that message. All our communication messages should have some means of getting that feedback and finding out whether it has been received. All around that, there's also the problem of noise. My 3 questions to you are: do you really understand your customers? Does your offering really solve their problems and communicate it in a language that they really understand? Getting real like that gives you a real competitive advantage. You will lock some customers in if you get all that right.
My biggest tip for printers is to think more about your customer and your customer's world, and less about your company, print, and what you offer. So that may sound a little strange, but trust me, it's what the customer wants to hear, and it will give you much greater effectiveness when you're talking to customers.
My biggest tip, and it doesn't matter if it's to a printer or anyone else, to be quite honest, is to do some work on understanding their customers better. And your marketing plan will be an awful lot better because you will understand who you're aiming it at.